The expansion of the Ottoman Empire into Anatolia and the Balkans is one of the most important and compelling chapters in medieval history. In the early 1300s, the region of Anatolia was in turmoil. The once mighty Seljuk Sultanate had fragmented into smaller principalities known as beyliks. These beyliks fought among themselves for territory, power, and influence. Amid this chaos rose a modest but ambitious leader named Osman I, the founder of the Ottoman dynasty. His principality was located in northwestern Anatolia, near the borders of the Byzantine Empire. This positioning turned out to be strategic. From this frontier zone, Osman led Ghazi warriors fighters motivated by both religious and territorial ambition into Byzantine lands, gaining ground little by little. His leadership was rooted not just in military strategy, but also in diplomacy and vision. Osman laid the groundwork for a dynasty that would eventually span 3 continents. His son, Orhan, continued his legacy with even more aggressive campaigns. Orhan captured key cities like Bursa in 1326, which became the new Ottoman capital. This was a major turning point. Bursa was not only a military victory but also an economic and symbolic triumph. It provided the Ottomans with a foothold in urban governance and trade, transforming them from a tribal group into a structured state. Meanwhile, in Anatolia, the Ottomans skillfully navigated power struggles between other Turkish beyliks. Sometimes they fought, sometimes they formed alliances, but always they advanced. They were not yet the dominant power, but their consistency and pragmatism kept pushing their borders outward. As their influence in Anatolia grew, the Ottomans turned their eyes west toward Europe. The Byzantine Empire, weakened and fragmented, was vulnerable. Taking advantage of internal Byzantine conflicts, the Ottomans crossed into Europe via the Dardanelles around the mid-14th century. At first, they launched quick raids, but soon they started occupying land permanently. In 1354, an earthquake severely damaged the fortress of Gallipoli, and the Ottomans swiftly seized the opportunity to take it over. From there, they began their true expansion into the Balkans. These conquests were not just driven by swords, they were powered by strategy, intelligence, and political manipulation. The Ottomans offered many Balkan rulers the chance to become vassals. This meant they could keep their lands and titles as long as they pledged loyalty and paid tribute. For many local lords, this was better than war. Thus, the empire grew not just through force, but through persuasion and adaptation. With the conquest of Adrianople in 1361, the Ottomans declared it their new capital. This was more than a military shift, it was a message. The Ottomans were now rooted in Europe. Murad I, who came to power in the 1360s, solidified these gains and implemented critical reforms. He created a professional army known as the Janissaries, elite troops taken through the Devshirme system. This system involved taking Christian boys from the Balkans, converting them to Islam, and training them as soldiers loyal only to the Sultan. While controversial, it provided the empire with a disciplined and effective fighting force. Murad's rule marked a shift from tribal warfare to a structured imperial military system. In 1389, the Ottomans faced a coalition of Serbian and other Balkan forces at the famous Battle of Kosovo. The battle was brutal and claimed the life of Sultan Murad I, but it left the Serbian resistance shattered. Though technically a draw, the Ottomans quickly declared it a victory and used it as a springboard for further conquests. Murad's son, Bayezid I, immediately took power and crushed internal rebellion before resuming campaigns in both Anatolia and the Balkans. His military efficiency earned him the nickname Yildirim, or the Thunderbolt. In a short time, Bayezid brought most of western Anatolia under Ottoman rule, subduing rival Turkish principalities and solidifying the empire's grip on the region. At the same time, he tightened control over the Balkans, defeating Christian armies and expanding Ottoman authority deeper into Europe. One of the most symbolic victories came in 1396 at the Battle of Nicopolis, where Bayezid's forces destroyed a large crusader army composed of French, Hungarian, and other European knights. This defeat stunned Europe and confirmed the Ottomans as a formidable power. By the end of the 14th century, the Ottomans were no longer a regional force, they were a rising empire. Their governance style also helped solidify their expansion. Rather than imposing strict central control, they allowed a degree of autonomy to local rulers as long as taxes were paid and loyalty was maintained. This flexible approach minimized rebellion and allowed the Ottomans to manage vast territories with a relatively small administrative force. They respected local customs and religions to an extent which made Ottoman rule more acceptable to conquered populations. While some empires crushed diversity, the Ottomans used it to their advantage. This was especially useful in the ethnically diverse Balkans. The empire's ability to absorb different cultures without losing its Islamic core was a hallmark of its success. Through vision, strategy, and a careful mix of tolerance and strength, the Ottoman Empire expanded deeper into both Anatolia and southeastern Europe, but this success also invited new threats. As the Ottomans pushed further into Christian Europe and fought rival Muslim powers in Anatolia, they attracted the attention of larger enemies, including one of history's most fearsome conquerors, Timur the Lame. As we enter Part 2, we will see how the rapid rise of the Ottoman Empire was tested by its greatest crisis yet, the Battle of Ankara, a clash that nearly shattered everything they had built. As the Ottoman Empire surged forward with unprecedented momentum, consolidating vast territories in both Anatolia and the Balkans, its ambitions were suddenly challenged by the arrival of a powerful force from the East Timur, also known as Tamerlane, a conqueror from Central Asia, whose military brilliance and brutality had already left a trail of fallen kingdoms. While Sultan Bayezid I had made a name for himself through swift conquests and military discipline, his rapid expansion had begun to worry not only European monarchs, but also Muslim leaders in the East. Among them was Timur, who viewed Bayezid's dominance over rival Turkic beyliks and his growing claim as the supreme Muslim ruler with increasing hostility. The stage was set for one of the most catastrophic confrontations in Ottoman history, the Battle of Ankara in 1402. As Timur advanced westward, he left behind a path of devastation across Persia and northern India, and when his attention turned toward Anatolia, he cleverly exploited the resentment among Turkish beyliks that had been subjugated by Bayezid. These beyliks, including the powerful Karamanids, welcomed Timur's approach as an opportunity to regain their lost autonomy. Bayezid, confident in the strength of his Janissary corps and territorial hold, marched east to confront Timur's army near Ankara. What followed was not merely a battle of swords, but of egos, strategies, and fate. The two armies finally clashed on July 20, 1402. Bayezid's forces were seasoned, but they were also exhausted from a long march in the summer heat. Timur's army, on the other hand, had better preparation and used superior tactics, including mobility and deception. Crucially, many of Bayezid's troops, particularly from the recently conquered Anatolian beyliks, defected mid-battle, weakening the Ottoman lines. Timur also unleashed war elephants and used scorched earth tactics to deprive Bayezid's army of supplies. The battle turned into a disaster for the Ottomans. Bayezid was captured, and his defeat sent shockwaves through the Islamic world and beyond. For the first time, the seemingly unstoppable Ottoman expansion had not just stalled, it had collapsed. Bayezid was humiliated, placed in a gilded cage, and paraded by Timur as a symbol of crushed arrogance. Though some legends say he committed suicide, historical accounts confirm he died in captivity a year later. With the Sultan captured and the army in ruins, the Ottoman Empire plunged into a period of internal crisis known as the Ottoman Interregnum. Bayezid's sons fought bitterly for control, each declaring himself sultan in different provinces. This civil war lasted over a decade, severely weakening central authority and allowing many conquered regions to reclaim independence or resist Ottoman oversight. In the Balkans, vassal states broke away, while in Anatolia, former beyliks re-emerged and realigned. Europe, witnessing this internal chaos, saw a rare opportunity to regroup. But despite this massive setback, the resilience of the Ottoman structure slowly became evident. Though fractured, the empire's administrative framework and military foundations did not completely collapse. The Janissaries remained a loyal and disciplined force. Over time, Mehmed I emerged victorious from the civil war, reunifying the empire and restoring order. His careful diplomacy and administrative reforms ensured that the empire would survive. By the time Murad II took the throne, the Ottomans had regained their strength, and by 1453, under Mehmed II, they would go on to achieve the ultimate prize, conquering Constantinople. Thus, the expansion into Anatolia and the Balkans had laid a solid foundation. Even if temporarily shaken by the storm of Timur, the Ottoman state's ability to recover from the devastation of Ankara demonstrated a strength few empires could boast: adaptability. They had learned from their defeat not just militarily, but politically. In the decades that followed, they built stronger diplomatic networks, refined the Devshirme system, improved tax collection, and centralized authority further under the Sultan's rule. Their policy of relative religious tolerance and autonomy for non-Muslim subjects, especially Christians and Jews, also helped reduce rebellion and encouraged loyalty. The empire that emerged after the Battle of Ankara was more cautious, more unified, and ultimately more formidable. The Balkans, once fragmented and vulnerable, were slowly reabsorbed into the Ottoman realm. Cities like Thessaloniki, Sofia, and Skopje became integral parts of a multicultural empire. In Anatolia, rival beyliks were either diplomatically absorbed or militarily crushed. And by the late 5th–10th century, Anatolia was firmly under Ottoman control. Trade flourished, infrastructure was rebuilt, and military training improved. The Ottomans were not just warriors, they were state builders, engineers, scholars, and visionaries. Their mosques, bridges, caravanserais, and schools transformed the landscape of the regions they governed. Their expansion into Anatolia and the Balkans was no longer just a story of conquest, it became a model of imperial endurance. The fear they instilled during their rise turned into respect over time as the Ottoman administrative system proved more stable than many European monarchies. And despite the horror of their temporary fall at Ankara, the empire not only survived, it evolved. By the 16th century, the Ottomans would become the most powerful Muslim empire in the world, stretching from North Africa to Arabia and from the Persian Gulf to the heart of Europe. Their journey, which began with a small principality on the Byzantine frontier, had passed through fire and chaos. But it was this very journey through Anatolia's wild lands and the battlefields of the Balkans that forged the identity of an empire destined to rule for over 6 centuries.